Here's today's First Word Daily Devotion.
On March the 5th, we're coming up to the last readings in Leviticus. We're closing in on Leviticus. You've almost read the entire book of Leviticus. So let's see what chapter 26 brings to us. In chapter 26, it's important for us to remember that the results of obedience. We're seeing in this chapter the blessings that come from obedience. However, we have an opportunity because of what we know through Jesus Christ, because of what the New Testament teaches us, because of grace. We understand that a heart that follows Jesus sees obedience itself as a blessing. But look at chapter 26 and verse 3. If you walk in my statutes and observe my commandments and do them, then I will give you rains in their seasons, land that yield increase, and the trees of the field shall yield its fruit. And look at all of these. You can just mark it in your Bible. The I will give, I will remove, I will walk. All of these things here. This is God's action, what He is going to do on behalf of those who obey Him. But I want you to pay attention to verse 12 and 13 of Leviticus 26. Verse 12 and 13 show us the heartbeat of the entire Bible. This is what the Bible is all about. This is why God does what He does. Even in creation, this is why God does what He does. Look at verse 12. And I will walk among you and be your God, and you shall be my people. I am the Lord your God who brought you out of the land of Egypt, that you should not be their slaves. I have broken the bars of your yoke and made you walk erect, or that is, made you walk upright, or we should say, make you walk uprightly. This is what God has accomplished, and then we see the reason that He's accomplished this, so that we can walk as we should walk with Him. But not only walk with Him, so that He Himself can walk with us. And look at what we have here in verses 14 and following. Pay attention to the language here as you read, because we're going to see this play out all through the rest of the biblical narrative, especially when we get into Kings and Chronicles. We're going to see this play itself out in the prophets. But look at verse 40. Look at verse 40. Verse 40 demonstrates that God is slow to anger and abounding in steadfast love. Here He is saying, all of these cursings are going to come upon you. But, verse 40, there again, that contrast of amazing grace. But if they confess their iniquity and the iniquity of their fathers, in their treachery that they commit against me, and also in walking contrary to me, so that I walk contrary to them, if they will, then 42, and then in verse 42, then I will remember my covenant with Jacob, and I will remember my covenant with Isaac, and my covenant with Abraham. Now, look at verse 46 of Leviticus 26. This tells us where all of this comes from. These are the statutes and rules, the laws that the Lord made between Himself and the people of Israel through Moses on Mount Sinai. Now let's turn over to Mark chapter 10 to see all of these truths that God is revealing continue to just come at us all at once here. Notice that we have this question about divorce, and then Jesus says in verse 3, what did Moses command? And so they answered that Moses said that we could have a provision for divorce. But then here we have Jesus, and this is not a contrast to the law. This is Him showing the purpose of the law. Look at what happens. Jesus said, because of the hardness of your heart, He wrote this commandment. Now, He takes us back from the beginning. In other words, He's talking about Genesis. From the beginning of creation, God made them male and female. Now, what are we supposed to learn from that? There's no contradiction in the Bible. Jesus is not coming to abolish. He's coming to fulfill. He's coming to give the law's intention in Himself. And here's what we're supposed to learn from this encounter. God responds to our condition. And in this case, He responds to the condition of our hardness. Now there's a great mystery there. God knows all, He sees all, but we're not puppets on a string. We're not marionettes. Instead, God responds to us. Now, notice how He responds to us. Look at what happens here. Again, talking about the commandments. In verse 17, someone comes up to Jesus and says, "Good teacher." And then he goes over the commandments with him. And then look at verse 21. And Jesus, looking at him, loved him, said to him, "You lack one thing." Jesus responds to us, he reacts to us, and his reaction to us is always with love. But as we close today, let's turn over to blind Bartimaeus. And I want you to notice in Mark chapter 10 and verse 46, as blind Bartimaeus comes up, I want you to notice this. Blind Bartimaeus sees more than most. Look at what he calls Jesus. Son of David, verse 47. Verse 48, Son of David. And then look at this language here in verse 49. Jesus stopped and said, "Call him." And they called the blind man, saying to him, "Take heart, get up. He is calling for you." Oh, that the Lord would call for us, even today, as we read his word, to remember that he is ready to hear us. He is ready to be with us. He is the God who desires for us to be with him. And one day he's going to call us. May it be even so today.